Hey, Michael J. here. Today's topic, Trump and Poilievre. Now, why am I lumping, this is not a cola commercial, why am I lumping Trump with Poilievre? Very simple. We see various ideologies that are basically similar. And it just makes it simple to take that position. It has to do with ideology. And to give you an example, we're gonna go to a podcaster first and foremost. This guy's a Canadian guy. Right after the debate last night, so today is February 25, 2025, a Lev 8 podcast. Nice enough guy. I've seen a few of his videos. But here's the thing. He only knows what he knows. And he brings people on, and he's had other videos. You can check his channel out to deal with Poilievre. And he only knows what he knows. And he brought another guy on. Well, let's look at the financials of all these different federal departments in Canada. And the thing is, neither one of these guys have any experience, and they base it upon a guy that's a graduate or a soon-to-be graduate at a university that has some accounting experience. But unless you've been out in the real world and you understand mergers and acquisitions, and you've actually integrated, say, 5 different companies into one operational facility, and the understanding that a lot of the accounting software has codes, and you have to, by department, assign department to codes, etc., etc. And the issue with the United States, with the seniors, like 150 years old or over 100 years old, is they use an old platform, COBOL, C-O-B-O-L. And it defaults to certain ways because there's certain things you're asking it to do that it's not designed to do. It's just old databases that have not been upgraded, and due to the massive systems and databases that they're dealing with, they haven't had the wherewithal because everybody got to cut expenses, and because we have this construct of a fiat system in place, everybody's working within this construct. So nonetheless, let's not diverge too much. So here's this guy. Let's, so you can listen to what, and I'll make my point.
Well, good morning. And that French debate last night was sucked. It was worth the price of admission, which was $0. Thank you, CPAC, for that. Really appreciate it. Worth the price of admission. So right away, this is an arbitrary and subjective viewpoint. Same as mine is an arbitrary and subjective viewpoint, but I'm coming from a different position. So what I know is different from what he knows. So he's just trying to maybe make a living, gets views on his web, on this. Look at, so 2 hours ago, 14,000 views, 73.2 thousand subscribers. So people buy into this stuff because they don't know any better. Simple as that. They only know what they know. He's triggering a response with them because what he says resonates. And therefore, this is how we get people that vote that don't know what the hell they're voting about because they do not understand cause and effect. They can't relate to what is going on in a manner that gives them cause and effect to how it plays out in their day-to-day lives. They just don't have that ability. So just listen here for a bit. It was exactly what we expected to happen, wasn't it? It was a whole love fest. I like your idea. I also like your idea. There's something I might try to do better on. Like, there is only one united thing. There is what the liberals would call zero diversity on that stage last night.
No, there's another word for that, and we call it civility. You can look it up any dictionary, what civility means.
There was nothing. It was brutal to watch. No diversity of thought, no diversity of action. It was just, what are we watching out here? And that's not the point of today's episode. We're going to dive into what Donald Trump announced yesterday, what that means for our country, how the liberals have responded with, what the conservatives might be doing.
Now, before we get any further into this, what we're going to do is look at the comments here. So here you go. So if Carney uses the Emergencies Act to stay in power until 2026, I think it's about time for a second bigger trucker protest. Well, number one, the trucker protest in Ottawa was at minimum 50% financed by Republican interests in the United States to create discord in Canada. And that is a fact. And then what you have to understand, the Emergencies Act that in the debate that Carney referred to was regards to maybe this guy's, I don't know if he even, Emergencies Act, but whatever Carney referred to in the debate was to deal with pipelines going from Alberta to the east coast of Canada. But Carney also stated, keeping in mind that there are provincial interests that have to be addressed and respectfully respected, and same with Indigenous factors that need to be respected and taken into consideration. And nobody can steamroll a project through without those considerations and without those other parts agreeing to an agreement in order to facilitate a pipeline across from Alberta to the east coast of Canada, or from Alberta strictly to the west coast of Canada. So here we go. Here's a guy just putting it out there, but this is the way people think. And that's, yay, bring out the large mining dump trucks, farmer manure spreaders, oil riggers, party time. Like, right. And then I have a question. Apparently, Canada is committed to sending $5 billion to Ukraine from the interest gained from seized Russian assets. And so here, he said, how does Trudeau and the Liberals get to decide this and when the Parliament is prorogued and no radical decision? You know, you have subjectively, arbitrarily considered it a radical decision. There could be foreign interests that are beyond your understanding, but it's outside your understanding. I'm referring to this guy that's posted. That's just the way it is. So you get 4 replies. He just keeps promising stuff. Exactly. Because they can with no, I despise them so much. Dictators can do anything they want. Well, you're seeing more of a dictator, autocrat style of play with Trump. You're not seeing it with the present government here in Canada. You see it more with the provincial government with Doug Ford, which is a preservative or a conservative government. And you say, well, how is that possible? Well, there's a certain act that gives him the power to override anything, and Doug Ford keeps exercising that act with legislation that gives him the power to do what he wants. Nobody else in Canada has really done it, but Doug Ford does it all the time just to get his way. And that's a conservative party, and that should be an insight into why a Poilievre federal party is not going to work. You see it in Trump. You see the backlash. You see how inflation's starting to spike. Once these tariffs hit, after a couple months, it's going to hurt the economy in the United States as much, if not more, than it will in Canada. And this is what people do not get. And here, guys, Canada opens its own refineries and not rely only on the U.S. That's what we need to do. That might be a good thing. It's a matter of the investments, how long it takes to get those investments going, how long it takes to get this refinery in place to do what we need. And then we always have to consider the environmental aspects of things. Because if you're not including that, you're missing out on a big factor of what's going on nowadays. We've kicked that ball too far down the road, and it's hurting us. And the Jasper in Alberta reflects that, and the California wildfires recently reflect that in the States. So Trump thinks Trudeau and his cronies are losers. Canadians want the top strong person to speak for them, and it's Pierre. Right. Based on a subjective, arbitrary analysis. Doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, you know. Bottom line is what you really need is now to diversify your trade to other areas of the world, become less reliant on the United States. And the United States may come back online to your way of thinking. Maybe you can do more trade with them, but they have not proven to be a reliable partner. And you say to me, well, that's not true. What do you mean it's not true? How is this guy able to do tariffs? You actually have a North American Free Trade Agreement called CUSMA. It was re-engineered by Trump's government the last time he was in power in 2016 to 2020. He's not even honoring any agreements that he signs. Donald Trump does not honor any agreements that he makes. And he blames it on everybody else.
And the nonsense and the way this current liberal staff likes to drag us into financial and economic hardship.
Why would you say this liberal government's dragging us into financial and economic hardship when Trump is forcing it upon its allies? That's the issue. Like, this is a misrepresentation of the ninth degree. It's simple as that.
It makes me want to cry. Here we go. But first, what I mean, and I mean it sincerely, there was nothing to watch last night. CBC Watcher says, no debate. I want to reiterate what my opponent says, and that's exactly what happened. You missed nothing. I know some were upset because we were supposed to live stream the debate last night, and then I thought it was the English debate. Turns out it was the French debate, and I was like, I only want to do this once. I'm not doing this twice. Only because I knew what we were getting ourselves into. There was going to be no challenging, no diversity of thought, no one really trying to push the envelope. It's always going to...
This is not necessarily true, but more so last night, because you notice there's 4 podiums, 4 people, even though the guy on the far right is a French businessman, all 4 of them are basically Anglophones for the most part. So this is not their first language, Francophone. So that's why you do not get different contrasts that this guy's hoping for. Plus, he wants people to slag people, and, you know, if you think that's the way to get ahead, by all means, you know, keep subscribing to, you know, that does wonders for your personal relationships. If you're married, you want to slag your wife all the time? Great. See what you get.
It was going to be a lot of agreeing, and a lot of like, I would do this, I might do that. Oh, that Freeland had a great idea here. That's all it was going to be. There was going to be no battling. You compare this to what the conservative leadership debate was like on the multiple ones they had, where people were going at each other's throats. It was wild to watch. You didn't get that here. Not one bit. However, there was one thing that happened.
So you're expecting people to go at people's throats? Do you think that's the way you get results? Right. What happened to the Roman Empire? It collapsed. Maybe the American empire is collapsing, and you're seeing a last stab at empirical power by America forcing themselves on others instead of going another way. The fact of the matter is, the American system has benefited greatly by free trade with Mexico and Canada. It has benefited their people greatly. Yet because of ego and the consciousness of the people, which is the lower level consciousness, which I'll expose as we go forward, get triggered by Trump triggering certain automatic subconscious responses within the ego of the mind. It's really as simple as that, believe it or not.
It was my favorite part of the night. I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. Mark Carney, 100% is the accident waiting to happen. I tell you, be patient. Be patient. He'll do it to himself. He'll do it to himself. Listen to him here. Again, this is a French language translation, but Freeland had to save his butt for saying something stupid in the French language debate. Here you go. Listen to the translation on this sucker.
I'm not proposing for one moment that we'll work with Hamas.
You'll agree on Hamas on a two-state
No, we don't agree with
solution.
Hamas. No, we're against
Yes, we're
Hamas,
against
absolutely.
Hamas. We are.
In
We're in favor of a two-state solution.
Oh my gosh. We agree with Hamas. Freeland's like, no. We're just say it very slowly, Mark Carney. We do not agree with Hamas. We don't.
Nice. Do you make fun of the handicapped people like that? Carney is only learning French recently. Not very good at it. Made a slip up, but if you watch the whole debate after, when they had an English and a French version where they came out on stage individually, he explained what happened. So if you think you're perfect and you are perfect all the time, and you never make a slip that you say, no, correction, this is what I really meant, then by all means, keep going the way you're going.
Don't agree with them on this stage. No. Oh my golly, this fool, man. This fool. Unreal. I can't believe it. And this shows you why we think this party is so corrupt. The way they turfed Ruby Dollar, because she may have been a little too provocative. She might have.
That's misinformation. Ruby Dalla turfed herself because there are certain guidelines that she did not maintain. She was given the opportunity to correct, and she refused to. It happens. But you got 4 people to pick from. So let that go, buddy. It just doesn't work here.
Have gotten the people going. And that's exactly what would have happened. She would have been the only person who was pushing something different on that stage. You have Freeland, and in a real debate, your opponent would have allowed him to walk into that. Yeah, idiot. He just said we all agree with Hamas. I don't agree with Hamas. You might agree with Hamas. That's kind of what would have happened.
But it was walked back in real time on the stage, so let it go.
Or should have happened, but no, of course, that's not the case here. Freeland had to save his bacon because this is all a setup to make sure Carney gets leadership. Nothing more, nothing less. And that was a gong show to watch. And before this liberal leadership race took place, do not forget what the issue is at hand. And that's massive tariffs set to hit our country. And Trump verified that they are on schedule and they will be coming.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people.
There you see, Trump saying right now, fools. He's the last guy between 2016 and 2020 that did CUSMA, which was NAFTA originally under the Mulroney government. And then CUSMA, he negotiated, and Freeland was the main negotiator. She struck a hard deal. That's why this guy doesn't like Freeland. But just like the Iran deal that Barack Obama negotiated with the Iranians, Trump, who even negotiated a deal to redo the North American Free Trade Agreement which is still in effect and not up for renewal and renegotiated until 2026, you can't make a deal with this guy because he just reneges on every deal, blames it on other people, and he's the last guy that did the North American Free Trade deal. That's still in effect. He's reneged on his own deal, blames it on other people.
Like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period.
So furthermore, on that understanding that I gave and the insight I gave to you, that should give you insight into the fact that these tariffs are because Trump's way of thinking. He's not the art of a deal. This guy is not a deal maker. It's corruption. He's been organized crime for a long, long time. That's where the Putin connection comes into play. This is beyond your understanding because the Panama Papers, the Paradise of Papers, and the Pandora Papers worldwide, where a lot of rich people were benefiting that came to the attention of the general public, caused David Cameron, Prime Minister of the UK, to have to resign because Trump was working with Putin. Originally it was Boris Yeltsin to undermine Gorbachev in the States, the dismantling of the USSR, and laundering money for the Russians. Money that was meant for the Russian people. Also laundering money for Colombian cartels. David Guzman in jail in Miami. Preet Bharara, Attorney General for Barack Obama, put him in jail. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on that you just do not understand.
Period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame our leadership for allowing it to happen. I mean, you know, who can blame them
your
if they
leadership.
made these great deals with the United States, took advantage of the United States on manufacturing, on just about everything. Every aspect that you could imagine they took advantage of. I look at some of...
But here's the thing. This guy Trump, and if you watch any of the other stuff he's posted and done on the CPAC, the Coalition for Conservatives in the States, he's going back to the 1800s and the tariffs during the 1800s, which gave rise to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which caused the Great Depression. You know how the Great Depression went? Because of tariffs. But he's going back to the 1800s, which he calls the Golden Age or the Gilded Age. And he wants to recreate that. And during that period of time, where the tax breaks were given to the top 1%, top 10%, but mostly the 1%, there was great riches to guys like Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, a few others. But there was great poverty, like you wouldn't believe. And this is where we're seeing, and this is where the issue really is, because this is why a Republican Party or a Conservative Party doesn't work, because they want to give tax cuts. And tax cuts are great when you can do it, but the thing is they're taken from themselves to make themselves look good. And eventually you end up with a spiraling debt problem. It's out of control, and this is what's happening in the States right now. And you're seeing it. They want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion to give $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to the American people. And all it's doing is creating a bigger debt problem. But how are they justifying it? They're cutting services to the people. This is why Elon Musk is doing what he's doing. But you don't understand that. And this is why these tax cuts, you got to be careful how you do them. Because the tail comes back to bite you. And this is why we have a problem in Canada and the states, because every conservative government over the last 100 years have been doing tax cuts, and it's created a debt problem for the countries. And certain times when you need economic stimulus and you have to go into a deficit, you're limited because of all these tax cuts on a regular basis. Just saying, just to make it clear what's really going on.
With these agreements, I'd read them at night and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this? So the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. All we want is reciprocal. We want reciprocity. We want to have the same. So if somebody charges us, we charge them. It's very simple, but it'll be very good for our country. Our country will be extremely liquid and rich again. Plus, we're doing other things, as you know. We're finding tremendous waste, fraud.
Waste and fraud. They're finding there's no waste and fraud. Very minimal. The bigger you are, you got to understand Canada, GDP of Canada is basically, if you're going to compare, is the state of Texas. Just slightly less than the state of Texas. So when you're trying to compare the U.S. to Canada, understand Canada's GDP is just a little bit less than the state of Texas. Okay? That's a comparative.
And abuse.
So there you have it. Again, he's referring to a lot of the different countries they're applying tariffs to, but made sure to call out Canada as well, that those tariffs are on time and they are incoming. And this is...
What about the free trade agreement this guy renegotiated? Why is that not being honored? And you're supporting these tariffs? Come on, buddy.
This is on the heels of what we discussed yesterday of what the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem saying, we can't fight both the depression and inflation. We only have one tool to deal with these issues, and it's interest rates. And we can only take on one of these issues. Which really makes you think, right? Back to when Mark Carney taking credit for the 2008 crisis and how it had next to no impact on the Canadian economy compared to our counterparts in the States. Remember when he took credit for that as the Bank of Canada governor, said, that was all me. Stephen Harper didn't do jack. It had nothing to do with policy. It was all me and my interest rates adjustments. That's all it was. It was all me, baby. We put interest rates down. Boom. Look at me. I'm the man. That's what he thinks of himself. It's a gong show to watch. And don't you forget it. This was published yesterday. Terry Newman, Carney did not protect Canadians from the '08 financial crisis. Banking system was stable for decades thanks to historical regulation.
National Post is not what I consider mainstream media. It's very slanted to the right, number one. Number two, Carney was also the Bank of England governor as well. And you had, I think it was on the Toronto Sun with, what's his name, Lilly. And you used as an example a former Prime Minister of the UK slagging Carney. Meanwhile, Tess, I think her name was Tess, she lasted 49 days because her economic policies got her turfed out because they wouldn't work. So we're going down a rabbit hole here that's really not working for anybody.
Regulations. Recently, Mark Carney sat back and failed to negate the claim that he deserved credit for having saved Canadian banks from the misadventures of our American neighbors during the '08 financial crisis. Carney can claim no such credit. In actuality, there are historical reasons for Canada's lack of vulnerability to such financial upsets, including a divergent institutional pathway and regulatory changes recommended by Canadian Supreme Court Judge Willard Etsy that safeguarded Canada's banking system from the financial crisis. According to a 2015 paper in the journal Economic...
Here's the other thing that this guy's not pointing out. Our Canadian regulations were much more stringent. Trump is dismantling the regulatory system. You have to understand the crash of 2008 was because the regulatory system in the States was not strong enough to circumvent the abuse by the American bankers. And here's the other thing. Since the end of the Second World War, we've had the American currency is the reserve currency of the world. And with that, there are perquisites that came with it. And this is why the free trade agreements with Mexico and Canada, with that ability of the Americans to have the reserve currency as the American dollar for the world, the Americans have abused it. Now, a result was the 2008 economic crash. Obama stick-handled out of it by using a different way of a very strong Keynesian economic policies where, they bailed out the automakers. And here's the other thing. The automaker bailout from 2008 was much less than the 2018 bailout by Trump with his failed tariffs fighting China. The U.S. farmers wiped out their business. $26 billion in support payments to keep the farmers going so that Trump could do his tariff war with China, wiped out the business that the farmers' soybean business took them decades to put together. Add the tax cuts of $7.8 trillion, and you had an inflation spike like none before in the States because you had a pandemic come. And so what causes inflation after a pandemic? Supply. Supply and demand. Nobody could work, so supply went out the window. And, there are these economic factors that this guy, young gentleman's not taking into consideration. But the bottom line is the American financial system and presidents have abused through their the advantage they have by having the U.S. currency as the reserve currency of the world. And it's catching up to them now. And this is what you need to realize.
History review. This relative stability of Canadian banks during the 2008 economic crisis is a product of historical circumstances. According to the authors, as early as the 19th century, Canadian and American banking systems took different paths. Canada set up a strong single regulator concentrated banking system, which they say absorbed the key sources of economic risk, mortgage and investment banking, while the U.S. developed what they do refer to as a relatively weak, fragmented, and crisis-prone banking system. In contrast to Canada, what emerged in the U.S. was a lightly to unregulated banking system and ultimately many more smaller and less stable banks. This goes back in history and predates Carney. Yet he's going to get up there and...
Yeah, but you notice at the bottom here it says to avoid other financial crises, experiences, or crises from 1863 to 1914. You're not mentioning the tariffs of 1822 that helped create this. You're not mentioning later the McKinley tariffs that created this. This is not being mentioned here, and this is what you forget to understand. And then it just goes to the Great Depression of the 30s, which was a result of the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. These tariffs are not going to work. You think it's a one-way street, it's just hurting Canada? No, it's going to hurt the States too. It just might very well crash the economy around the world. We'll see. Come on, wake up.
Lie that it was all him, that he did everything. Yet it wasn't about policies. It wasn't about frameworks and regulations that were implemented long before he arrived. It wasn't as well as the addition with the policies that Harper implemented. Nothing to do with them, no. Carney would like you to think it was him. Him adjusting interest rates is what helped us in 2008. And yes, that might work on the financially illiterate crowd, but anyone who knows anything about anything knows that that is an absolute crop. It's crop. And so for them to get up there in that French language debate and just watching them agree with each other of how they're going to deal with Trump and how they're going to deal with the economic system, and just hearing Carney think and promote himself as, I am...
Man, how are you going to deal with Trump? Trump's a crook. You see it with the Trump deal with Russia and Ukraine. Now he's calling Zelensky a dictator. You don't understand what's going on. Trump has been working with Putin for decades now. There's stuff going on you do not understand. And I'm not going to go further into this video explaining that. Maybe another video we may do that. And I'm not going to go further into this video. I'll put in the description, I'll put a link. You can, if you want or interested, you can watch this video. You know, the guy means well, but he's providing misinformation from my point of view. My knowledge is different from his. So what I'm going to show you now is another comparative, and I think it's important for you to see. And this is a CNN video. It's going to be a short one. We're not going to go into this much further. I just want to make my point. Why Trump and Poilievre are no good for either Canada or the U.S. So this video, CNN, was today, February 25, 2 hours ago. This is a rancher in Colorado.
Elon Musk of Doge.
Good old Elon Musk of Doge. Like, what is it that people friggin' kowtow to this Elon Musk because he's the richest guy in the world? The guy's not a brilliant guy. You just got to look a little closer, folks. Guy's probably done some good things, but to give him the credit, and he's way in over his head with what he's doing in the U.S. right now. But let's look at this video. I don't want to digress
Elon
too
Musk
much.
of Doge has another message for federal workers who don't respond to an email they received over the weekend asking them to justify their jobs or lose them. The deadline for that email was at midnight. But earlier today, the Office of Personnel Management said a response was, quote, not mandatory. And just before airtime, Musk posted this, quote, subject to the discretion of the president, they will be given another chance.
Like, what kind of stupidity is this? Indiscriminately, they fire FAA workers. I got to show you something. I'm going to show you something very, very quickly on this note, now that it came up. Like, firing FAA workers. Like, friggin' unbelievable. Wrong button. Wrong one. Where is it? Well, actually, I have it right here. I can bring it up right here. Got it right in the system here. Yikes. Let's bring it up for you. There you go. Tells you everything you need to know. Simple as that. January the 20th. Soon as Trump's team took power, FAA director fired. January 21. Air traffic controller hiring freeze. January 22. Aviation Safety Advisory Committee disbanded, eliminated. January 28. Representative did the same letter thing to employees of the FAA. And then January 29, you get the first mid-air collision of planes in 16 years. You've had 4 more since then. Like, come on, folks. Like, you think this gutting civil service is a great thing. Like, gutting civil service is not meant to be done that way. You can do it to create some value, because the bigger the government, the bigger the cracks are going to be. That's just a natural factor of business, whether it be private enterprise or the civil service.
Failure to respond a second time will result in termination. A month into the administration, Trump voters seem to be paying attention to the cuts and the threats. John King tonight has a new all over the map report from Colorado.
Spoma Ranch spans more than 100 acres, home to 60 horses, and one last bison.
This little guy down here, his name is Trouble.
A bit ornery at times. Yes, trouble.
You know, it's like Trump. I really don't like him as a person. I think he's arrogant, kind of a jerk, but...
David Hayes is a funny man.
I tried farming for a while, and I would rather get run over by a bison, you know.
The Northern Colorado Ranch has been in his family since the 1880s. The White House and Washington are far away.
You did hear what he said about Trump. But later in this video, John King's going to ask him, would you vote for Trump again? Or who would you vote for? This guy would still vote for Trump, even after he said what he said.
We got like hot dogs.
Yes, Hayes wants the government shrunk, but he doesn't see a coherent plan. And he doesn't trust Elon Musk, doesn't believe what he says, doesn't want Trump letting Musk poke around Social Security or tax files.
I don't know how many people he's fired. And, you know, Musk keeps saying, well, I found $1 billion of waste here. And Social Security, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are collecting it that are between 100 years old and 150. Can you believe any of that crap? You can't substantiate it, but you can't believe it. So that's a trust issue.
A blue-collar rural guy in one of the nation's most competitive congressional districts. A three-time Trump voter who calls the president unfocused and arrogant. But Democrats should hold the celebration.
But if you had a do-over tomorrow and you had to pick again between Trump and Harris, what would you do?
I would still do Trump.
The friggin' power's in the pudding. He'd still do Trump. Even after all that, he knows they're lies. He knows what he's doing he doesn't like, but he'll still vote Trump. And this is the thing. When you're at a low level of consciousness and not understanding cause and effect and how it affects people's lives on a day-to-day basis, you think this is great. Oh, cut, without understanding how it affects your life. A lot of you just cannot realize how it affects your life indirectly, how it affects other people's life, how it would affect your life if you were in the position of the people that are getting cut. Because a lot of these civil servants, whether you agree to it or not, are necessary because they provide the foundation and services that you rely on and other people in your community rely on.
So conservative independent, is that fair?
Very conservative independent, yes.
Now, this is an interesting thing, too, because now we're talking about first-generation immigrant or second-generation. I think she's a first-generation immigrant, came in with her family, and originally was a migrant worker. So this is a very interesting factor, too, and this is where the border issue. And even though this person is a family of migrant workers, but mind you, she's moved up, like the Jeffersons, moving up. If anybody's watched 70s sitcoms, you'd understand the Jeffersons, moving up. I digress again.
So would Esmeralda Ramirez-Ray. She smiles when asked about Trump's frenetic first month.
I voted for that. I love it.
What did you vote?
I voted for that. I love it. You know what she loves? And this is the thing. 95% of the time, everybody in this world is running from your subconscious mind and ego mind. It might be hard for you to wrap your head around, but this is what you're seeing right here, right now.
Vote for?
I voted for a president that was going to put America first. I voted for a president that was going to secure our borders. And I voted for...
See, all it takes is a guy to say America first, Canada first, secure our borders, because all you're doing is creating fear and a response to where you've probably campaigned on everything's broke, and everything's broke. And things are broke. We've gone through a tough time with the pandemic and a few other things that created this. and we're not going to go into it in this video, but the thing is, you're being triggered. And you're being triggered, your ego mind is being triggered by this Make America Great Again, Make Canada Better. Happened in 1930s Germany, Make Germany Great Again. It's been used many times over in history. A lot of this stuff that you experience right now has been done historically. This is nothing new, and this is what you don't realize. But 95% of the time, you're operating from the subconscious mind, and the other part of your mind is the egoic mind. And you see it right here. The farmer, even though he recognizes all those things that are no good, but because he's a staunch Republican, because the bravado that Trump presents to the general public, he's still going to vote Trump again. This woman here, she explains very same thing, but her story's different. The farmer was 1880s America. This lady's a migrant worker family that's gotten into a higher paid position, better job.
For a president that was going to make sure that we were respected throughout the world.
And to be respected throughout the world. Like, give me a friggin' break. You're that insecure that you have this need to sacrifice, cause pain and suffering in order to show people, show the world that you need to be respected. And this is really all it is, folks. You just got to wake up to it. You're doing it in the United States, it's coming into Canada, it's in various parts of Europe with the AfD party and that Elon Musk is promoting in Germany, came in second in the recent voting that just happened a few days ago. And you don't get it. You want to cause pain and suffering? Or do you want to create an environment that's loving, positive, and creates a good life for people? It's really as simple as that. You can have love and peace, or you can have pain and suffering.
And I believe I'm getting that.
Greeley is the northern edge of Colorado's 8th, a congressional district that is 40% Hispanic and has a significant undocumented population. Ramirez-Ray is a court interpreter for defendants who don't speak English. She agrees with Trump that some who cross the border illegally are violent criminals, but she wishes he would add that the overwhelming majority are good people.
I was raised as a migrant worker working in the fields. Those are the people that are out there picking their crops.
So here we're going to see this pattern again. And I'm just showing you the pattern. She was raised as a migrant worker, picking fields in the crops.
So even though I support Trump, I don't believe that he's the end-all, be-all savior of humanity. Nobody is.
Now this one, we've had Canadian Hoser for a long time before all this stuff came up. Right. Well, the fights with American and Canadian hockey players and everything.
Like Hayes, Todd Waffle says Trump can be arrogant and pompous, but like Ramirez-Ray, he's a fan of the early pace.
I like him going full speed. Let's get things done. Let's find out if the policies work, they don't work. But yeah, this is the baby.
The great social experiment. All you got to do is go back in history. The McKinley Tariffs in the 1800s did not work. The Smoot-Hawley Tariffs under Herbert Hoover, 1929-1930, caused the Great Depression. Didn't work. And now we like this frenetic pace. You know, this is just an ego stroke. It's an ego stroke. And this is really what it is. People are not thinking cause and effect. And does it cause pain and suffering? Or does it cause love, harmony, and abundance for everybody, whether it's financial or roof over your head or whatever the case may be? You just don't get it.
Maybe brewing system, boil it up there.
Waffle started Satire Brewing 7 years ago. Business is good, and he constantly debates expanding. But a plan to boost sales by adding canning machines is on hold because of Trump tariffs on aluminum.
When you fly enough, you understand, buckle your seatbelt, turbulence ahead.
Buckle your seatbelt, turbulence ahead. Yikes. What's happening now already happened 200 years ago. Why would you keep repeating the same thing over and over again? Have you not evolved in your way of thinking, not connecting the dots? Like, it may sound like I'm talking down, like, listen, I've been on my own since 14, so I couldn't go to school, so I'm just telling you my viewpoint. I was a millionaire by the time I was 29. I understand the Trump-Putin connection because I witnessed it. I was a result of it because of what I knew. It cost me 40 to 50 million in lost revenues. So why do you have to go through this? This guy could be expanding his business because of the tariffs on aluminum. He can't expand his business anymore. Things are going great, but now he's a buckle up. Like, come on, why would you do that to yourself?
Approach is a trademark of many Trump voters. Accept the things that make you cringe to get the things you want, like a better economy and a stronger border.
Trump's going to say what he's going to say. And yeah, some of it's going to be exaggerated, some are not going to be true. But at the end of the day, I think you got to, sift through all that. Is he going to get things done? Is he going to get the country moving the right way?
Let go right in front of your eyes, just like that.
Austin Jenkins voted for lower taxes and less regulation. That would help his small businesses, including his cocktail bar and the Greeley Hatchet House.
You seemed like the lesser of two evils, in my opinion.
But Jenkins finds the first month unsettling. Not a fan of tariffs or executive orders by the dozens or Musk popping from agency to agency.
Do you see a pattern? This guy doesn't accept the Elon Musk thing, the tariffs. A lot of things he does not like. He doesn't like seeing this stuff.
I thought there's supposed to be checks and balances somewhere.
So where do I want to let go? Shoulder?
But he voted for Trump. He thought there's checks and balances. Like, people don't think stuff out.
Right in front of your eyes. So.
Plus, he sees fear in the Latino community, wishes Trump would find a more compassionate way to improve border security.
I think there's a better way to go about it. I don't know if it's necessarily just force them out.
Trump, of course, won't be on the ballot next election, but this district will help decide whether Republicans keep their tiny House majority.
The cost of living's getting crazy here in Colorado, and I hope that they would have some kind of an impact on helping that.
The new Republican congressman won by just 2,000 votes. His 2026 re-election prospects will likely hinge on Trump's performance, on whether swing voters here see the president as focused on the big issues or veering too far off target.
So, John, of all the Trump supporters you spoke with, some had complaints or at least unease about the president's first month back in office. Should the president be concerned?
Well, he should listen to them, Anderson, certainly. You do see some evidence today with the Trump administration backing off that Musk email to federal employees as perhaps evidence they are listening. Look, Trump voters, they understand there's a price of admission, some of the chaos, some of the other things. But what they most voted for was lower prices and a secure border. That half of the Trump voters we talked to complained about Musk, worried that he has too long of a leash. That's pretty interesting. Normally, people complain about Trump's tone, not so much about what he's doing. So if you're the president, you want to keep an eye on that. But the bigger risk is that, look, Trump's not on the ballot. 2 years from now, House Republicans will be and Senate Republicans will be. The district we were in is one of the most competitive districts in the country. It is very evenly divided. And if swing voters or soft Trump voters think that Trump and Musk and Republicans in Congress are off doing other things like wandering into federal agencies or looking at the Social Security records and not lowering costs and worrying about the border, the Republicans could pay the price. So we'll keep going back to this district. We're only a month in. I wouldn't shoot up any flares yet if you're
only a month in. Barely anything's been done to the border. It's just that it's not being put out. It's not a talking point of the Republicans. You got to understand, over the last decades, that's what the Republican Party's always done. It's the border issue. This is how they get voted back in. It's the border issue, and then tax cuts. That's why your debt's so friggin' high now that you got no point of return. But lower costs. Costs are going up. These tariffs start kicking in, costs are going to keep going up. They're going to keep going higher and higher and higher and higher. So that's my point.
These tax cuts and free markets, the way Poilievre in Canada, Conservative Party, Doug Ford, Danielle Smith, Alberta, Mo Scott, Saskatchewan, Trump in the United States, doesn't work. All it's going to do long term is just create a debt problem that creates other problems. So this is why Trump is going to cause pain and suffering. Poilievre is going to cause pain and suffering. And you, the electorate, have the ability to understand cause and effect. Got to get out of your head. Look at things from a factual point of view. Let the ego go. Do you want pain and suffering? Do you want a loving, harmonious, and financial prosperity situation? It's really as simple as that. So I'm going to leave that with you. You have to make your own decisions. Use discernment. Don't get caught up in the hype. Just because somebody else is getting caught up in the hype, don't get caught up in the hype. Do what's either loving, harmonious, and prosperous, or what's going to cause pain and suffering. You'd rather have pain and suffering? Makes no sense, but that's your choice. So, when things spiral out of control, you're not sure what to do, anxiety's got a hold of you. You got no control over your thoughts. Meanwhile, you don't understand you're not your thoughts, but it's doing a number on your psyche. What are you going to do? Tell you what, sleep on things, take a few deep breaths, learn to relax, do what my buddies do. Take care, folks. Sending love and peace to everybody. And remember, what Bill and Ted said? Excellent. Yikes. Ciao for now.